Hello, everybody. Welcome. We have Eric Berger with us today. Eric, you look startlingly different than Peter Beck, but you are maybe a better guest for what's going on this week. So we're excited to have you come and fill in and help us out because
Peter Beck did not read the OIG report. We had to cut him from this show and move him.
Exactly.
Give you another month.
Yeah, the OIG. We emailed the Rocket Lab PR and said, look, we can't have Peter on today. There are more important things to talk about, and that's where we are. So, Eric, thanks for coming on today. We appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Yeah. We got lots to talk about, Anthony. There's kinds of stuff.
So many things. I put a giant rundown together that hilariously includes topics we're never going to get to any chance.
Yeah, I know. We have this problem all the time where we make a list for a guest. Like, here's 5 things we want to talk about, and every time we look back and go, there was space for one of those things, and every time we still make a list of 5 things. So we'll see how many we can get through today.
I think we're going to go out on Eric doing his best MK BHD on driving this rover around a parking lot. So
I think so.
That.
Yeah,
we're going to save that because Jake's got to get some OIG things off his chest. Jake has a whole new... Eric, you're normally the Artemis remanifesting guy, but I think Jake's got a whole nother theory today. In our ongoing series, Taking Down NASA Johnson. This is yet another installment, I think. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah. It's dark. I'm not in a good place today, so we'll see how this goes.
Anyway, we should start with drinks. Yeah. But also, I want to just comment on Eric's Blue Origin shirt.
Yeah, we got to show that off a little bit there.
I know things are looking up because it's this one. It's not the other Blue Origin shirts that we bought off the weird Shopify site. It's this legit one from the real merch shop.
Yeah. This is the year of Blue Origin, right? I mean, they're going to launch New Glenn. They're making progress on their lander. They're building a crew spacecraft. I mean, lots of stuff's happening.
And they're getting a study to go to Mars.
Two studies.
2.
Yeah, 2 projects. We got that. Yeah. All right, what's everybody drinking?
Eric, you want to start?
Absolutely, yeah. So I have a UFO white beer.
Ooh.
It's a Belgian white beer. My dogs are very excited about something. Sorry about that. But I just found it at HEB here in Houston, and it's excellent. So
I low-key love HEB. That is a fantastic grocery store.
It is, yeah, absolutely.
Every time that I went to Houston for the Planetary Science Conference, that's my ritual was arrive on the Sunday, go to the Airbnb or whatever, settle in, go to HEB and get the week's groceries to get me through the conference. I would just get these they had these spicy jalapeno Monterey Jack's cubes of cheese that I would buy in a big bin, and a whole bunch of crackers, and I would just munch on those for the week. That's the best.
In a big bin.
In a big bin. I have very positive associations with HEB. Love that store.
It's like the Hotsy Totsy Texas one, right? That's the Wegmans of Texas or the Publix.
Yeah, pretty much.
Variant is.
Wegmans is one I understood. Yeah.
Yeah. You know about Publix. Come on.
I do, but I know Wegmans better.
As you should. Anyway, I've got an Of Kolsch I Still Love You. I'm on my last of the Starbase beers, Jake. Of Kolsch I Still Love You.
Nice.
And I don't know, I bet Eric didn't see last week we got a sponsorship from these puffin koozies. Look at this thing.
Oh, that's awesome, man. I love that.
Well, if the box that I'm going to send to Jake gets rejected at the border, I'll just have him send it over to you. Quick reroute.
We'll see.
What do you got, Jake? Did you make something weird colored again this week?
Well, I've started already. This is how bad the OIG report is that I cracked this open during the pre-show, but I went and got I haven't had a Jake-sized beer in a while, but check this out. This is whatever the Latin American equivalent of a Jake-sized beer is. It's this funky wine-shaped bottle. But this is, I don't know, it's Chilean. So it's Cerveza Fuerte Madurada con Roble Americano, aged in oak, American oak. And there's all those fancy spices you put in this kind of beer. It's like kind of dark, and you put a little bit of cloves and cinnamon and stuff in it. So
I'll be honest, it kind of looks like they intended to be a winery, and hops showed up instead of grapes, and they were like, I guess we'll just go for it.
And around here, man, that's what you do. You just kind of go with the flow and work with what God gave you, right? So
now, I've got some oak trees in my backyard. Should I just go put like a 6-pack of Bud Light in there and then come back like a year later and it's
aged?
I think that will do literally the exact same thing. I think there's no way that can go wrong.
The dogs will also love that.
The dogs will love that. So.
All right, we've got 8,000 angles on this SLS Orion stuff since we talked last. I don't know what the right way is. So we've got your reports from however the hell long ago it was that workforce may be shifting on SLS. Also, your report from forever ago about Artemis Manifest, Artemis 2.5 being a thing.
Pop it back up there. Yeah.
Which seems like we're revisiting that whole thing again with maybe we should do a different Artemis 3, and then the OIG report that had at least three parts that are actually hilarious to read about, and maybe we could run down some of those. But
can I just start with saying, like, so looking back to the original Artemis, what we call it, Artemis 2.5 or whatever, the pop it back up there episode, it's pretty wild that when we had you on, Eric, to talk about that, there was like, that was when it was like, here are some potential changes. Yeah, pop it back up there. Some changes that could be coming. And if we look at this now, I think all of them now are either like, that's the best case scenario. Like none of these are on schedule. Like I think they're all off now at this point, aren't they?
They're all off because Artemis 2 is still fiscal year 2024 here.
Yeah.
I guess it is Artemis still 2, barely, right?
2024. Oh, yeah.
I forget when it's
fiscal year 2024 ends
next September.
No, this September.
Oh, this September. Yeah. So
September
we're a
30th,
year off.
Yeah. So if they happen to launch, if we happen to launch Artemis 2, like what is it scheduled now? Is it November next year? Is that the September?
I think it could. I think it still happen.
So I guess that's the content or the cadence one. Yes.
If there are 0 more delays, then we may make the cadence and the content ones just barely.
Well, there's no way Artemis 3 happens, right? With that schedule. So.
No, it's wild. So yeah, I wanted to bring that up at least.
NASA is super sensitive about this stuff. I have found increasingly because there's a lot of congressional pressure. They're obviously worried about budget cuts, and it's just like they do not want to talk about it. They're not real happy with me right now. For talking about it. And quite frankly, the heat shield stuff, I do think it's possible that Artemis 2 gets redesigned to accommodate some of these heat shield concerns. I'm not going to really go into how I think that could happen, but there is pressure to fly, and those pictures are not. It's pretty glaring, and I'll tell you. As a reporter, it's pretty upsetting that 18 months after the flight, we had never seen those photos. I mean, it's too strong to say they're hiding something, but the photos speak for themselves, and they don't want that out there. But it's not good. It's not a good look. Yeah.
Put it the other way, right? If one of the commercial crew or cargo companies had these pics and didn't release them for 18 months, and then it came out, they would be eviscerated. I mean, there's people still will bring up, I think, the first approach and landing test that Dream Chaser had that like tumbled off the runway because it broke a landing gear, and it's like, we've never seen these pictures. We only see pictures of dice hanging at it, clearly not a right angle. So like this would have been, I would have hit the hot drama button for the first time in years.
If Dragon came back from demo 1 or demo 2 with that picture, I mean, you'd be like, it would be insane. But like
federal investigation, the whole thing.
There'd be people quitting Twitter. Yeah.
And I mean, something that really hasn't come up, but I think is germane, is that we are now on literally the 20th anniversary of program start for the Orion spacecraft. Like literally, it is 20 years old. I mean, this ought to be a solved problem, right?
Not just that, like Eric, like 20 years from program start, but also it's going to be 10 years from its first space flight. And at best, we will just then be determining if the heat shield works.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. EFT1 in I think it was November 2014 really was kind of a stunt because, again, they were feeling some pressure to fly. That was really a boilerplate spacecraft. It wasn't simulating lunar return velocities.
Yeah.
But I agree. I mean, it's like, come on, this is hard, but you've had 20 years, you know, it's a long time, not just 20 years, but like $1 billion a year.
Yeah.
It's real money.
Yeah. And the other thing I've been like thinking about a lot too, is that like, so, you know, for a while there, SLS was taking all the heat for delays, right? Like the original launch, 2017, pushed back. They gained 5 years where SLS drove the schedule out, 5 years where Orion was funded. Like they got their annual funding in those 5 years. You know, it's not like they just got paused. Oh, you're ready. We'll put you in a bin and save the money for 5 years. No, like they got funded for those 5 years, and still somehow now they're pushing the, you know, now they're the long pole item is like it's kind of disappointing, right? for what it's been doing. So yeah, it is dark, man. It's dark.
Can I read you my favorite part of this OIG report? That's my favorite sentence in the history of OIG report lines.
Pop it up there.
I'll pop it up here because it is absolutely fantastic. It's this section titled Elevators, which says, according to an agency official, going into Artemis I mission, it was not known that the elevator, quote, blast doors were not in fact blast doors, but rather fiberglass doors designed to keep wind out. Which, thinking about how this line, like the history of this line here, right? At some point, somebody referred to these doors as blast doors, whether or not that's because they thought they were or because they just referred to them that way. And someone else copied down, oh, the blast doors that are in place. And then everyone assumed that those were blast doors. And then found out no one had ever ordered blast doors. Like it wasn't like they found the other blast doors around and they were like, oh shit, we never did put these in. They just aren't blast doors.
That's what happens when you spend 15 years building the ground support equipment, right? And modifying the launch tower. It's like you have people come in and then people go and it's just, you get turnover. It's
Yeah. The people that approved those blast doors are gone. They're not a member of the team anymore.
but I mean, I really don't care that NASA budgeted $5 million for pad refurb and it's $25 million. I mean,
that's not a big deal.
It's a small price to pay, and I got to admit, it's a pretty awesome rocket to sit out there in a hurricane, and then like a literal hurricane, and then fly like days later.
I forgot about that, honestly.
That was a really strong move by that rocket. So I mean, I give him credit for that, but you know, maybe
that was a flex.
I don't know.
Yeah. But, well, I mean, so you're right. Like the blast door is like really not a big deal.
Fun.
It's a really funny. It's a bit we would have done on this show as like a comedic bit entirely. Right?
But it's funny though because like this is not funny actually. So I actually don't think that's the funniest part. Like I thought there was funnier ones even like on the less headline making ones because like there's the bit about the cameras blows my mind that this happened, right? So this, you know, the launch at night, I think it's already like not being covered right because they're saying like, oh, it launched at night and so it wasn't good enough data to learn about the things they need to learn about when you're filming it. But if you read through it, the cameras would have worked fine, but they forgot to turn them to night mode. Basically, they forgot to change the exposure settings, or rather they did remember, but they didn't check that it actually worked, and it didn't. So they have like, I'm piecing all this together, right? So you have like there's the DSN problem with the hard drives that were dead for a year and nobody knew about. There's the parachute sank. There's the cameras weren't set on night mode. There's the Orion shield is still not working, right? Like all these things adding up. This is where I'm like very concerned because it's like no one thing is like a really big deal, but altogether like has me really. I'm concerned. Like, I don't know how all of this can all happen at the same time on the same program. Is it like, are we just getting more visibility? And so it seems like more like, are there this many like big problems like this at every, you know, organization that we don't have visibility into, or is this remarkable? That's like the thing I'm thinking about a lot right now.
I mean, I do think that look, these are extremely complex systems. They're trying to integrate a big rocket, all these complicated ground systems, spacecraft, and upper stage, and they were doing it for the first time. So I think they did find a lot of things, and that's really, it is what a test flight is supposed to find. And so I don't really have a problem with all that stuff, because I think that just happens when you shake out a new system.
Yeah.
And I am glad that they actually finally flew it, right, to get that data.
Yeah.
I am more concerned about the insight we've had to the heat shield, because I distinctly remember when it came back, they described it as a perfect flight and they had some minor issues. But the heat shield, they sort of talked about it, said, we're going to find the root cause. But, here we are 18 months later, and they still haven't found the root cause. And my sources have told me that it's really pretty serious, to the point where they are considering really what to do with Artemis II. So I'm glad this report came out, because it certainly gave some visibility to an issue that NASA has been working on. But they have not been transparent about this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's concerning, because 4 astronauts are supposed to get in this vehicle, fly around the moon, and then come back. And chances are it will be fine, right? I mean, it's a robust heat shield. The spacecraft survived Artemis I, so why wouldn't it survive Artemis II? And I don't think NASA people are inherently evil, right? These engineers are generally good people who want to do the right thing, but you do worry about things like the normalization of deviance, and you do wonder why they just really haven't shared that much information about this problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the call out by Kathy to, why we already knew about these problems. Like, this is redundant. This is a wasteful report. You just got in the way. It's like, it's so out of touch, because it's like, yeah, well, we didn't have these photos, and just like to your point, 18 months later that we haven't seen these is like pretty wild. And so the point is to do this report. The point is to keep journalists up to date with, what's actually happening, so they can ask questions and get deeper, and to hold NASA accountable to actually fixing it, right? Because if they haven't shown us the photo for 18 months, then like what else would they not have shown us if we hadn't had the OIG report, right? Like it's a little scary. It's a little.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost been no media availabilities with Catherine Kerner, Jim Free, Mike Serafin, other really key officials that could talk about this problem. It's just the media has kind of been kept at arm's length about that. And like, as a reporter, you cannot really dial up NASA and say, hey, can I get an interview with Kathy Kerner? It just doesn't happen. I tried to do it for the Artemis III story I did a couple of weeks ago. I just got a blank statement. So, I mean, they're in a difficult spot, but they really should be doing a better job of communicating, I think, what's going on.
Yeah.
So if they're considering, much to Bill Nelson's rejection on his Joe Rogan-length congressional appearance from this week, he really held court for 3 hours through inane questions. That was if nothing was a test of stamina, that they're reconsidering or considering alternative Artemis 3s, and also considering alternative Artemis 2s. Really, the only option is not going to lunar speeds on the heat shield, or like figuring out a way to slow back down in Earth orbit. But good luck with that, Delta V.
Yeah.
There's weird stuff there where, like, my one fear with all these remanifestings, and where I think that they should, I could feel resistance to do it because they've made crew announcements and big, like pronunciations of this is going to be the first, all the superlatives, right? The first this to do that, the first thing that's going to go to a place that hasn't been since Apollo. All of that gets rewritten. So do you disband that crew and pick a new crew for Leo-based Artemis II? Or
so let me just be clear. I do think Artemis II will fly as it currently is manifested. I think NASA will get. I think NASA will get there and understand the problem to the extent where they can sort of talk themselves into understanding the cause of this and how to fix it if it needs to be fixed. I'm much more confident that there are likely to be changes to Artemis III. But then again, if like this heat shield pushes Artemis II out a couple of years, maybe that's not necessary. So it's all in flux.
The Artemis III one confuses me though, because you think about, you're talking about your story here that they're looking or thinking about having Starship Orion dock in Leo as like an Apollo 9 style mission. When, like, not to be the guy that's on Twitter all the time, but like, you could do this mission with a Dragon and not waste your Orion flight, right? Like, the concept is, can crew go into Starship and poke around with it, and can Starship dock with a thing? We do have a lot of these parts. That's all I'm saying.
I really disagree with that, because I think the point is to prove that Orion can dock with Starship, right? That is the risk, and you'd rather do that close to home than far from home. And then it's not an Artemis mission at this point if you're not using Orion and SLS. Right.
Well, I guess that's me misidentifying which part people are thinking is the part they want to test. Like, they want to test crew getting into Starship and give the vehicle a shakedown, or are you not actually worried about the Starship part? In which case,
well, I think in that scenario though, wasn't Starship going to be the passive target? Like, Orion was doing the docking, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. So if you do that with Dragon, you're not really like, you don't even need the Starship at that point.
I thought it was the other way.
No, I think Orion's doing the active part, right?
Should have flown at the ISS, I guess.
So if you listen to what Nelson said to Representative Frank Lucas when he was asked about my article, which was a shock to sort of sit there and hear that as the first question coming out from Congress, he did not deny it, right? He just said, this is the plan. And of course it's the plan, right? Yeah. But I am 100% certain that NASA has asked SpaceX to go and do a detailed study on Leo docking with Orion and Starship for 100%. Artemis III. Yeah. So, like, I like I said, I don't know what will happen, but I think NASA is concerned about cadence of these missions. I think they should be right to be concerned about cadence of missions, and that concept really kind of hits a sweet spot of buying down some of the risk for a lunar landing, saving the ICPS for the actual lunar landing, and then you get to fly an Artemis mission before 2020 or 2029.
Yeah, I feel like they got themselves in a bit of a trouble with that cadence bit, right? Because it's like once Artemis 1 happens, then it's like all of a sudden the expectations ramp up. It's like, well, it's ready now. The rocket's flown, Orion's flown. Let's go. Like, every year we should have a flight at this point, right? But
pretty clearly they had to fly it, because they had to find out if the rocket worked, which it did, which was awesome. They had to find out and if the spacecraft worked, and it did, but there are issues. So it's clearly going to take some time to correct it. I'm young enough to remember when the pacing issue for Artemis II was the boxes, the avionics boxes that they had to pull from Orion.
And they nailed those. Did you read that in the report?
Yes, I did. That was awesome.
That's way faster than intended.
They're just knocked them way faster than expected. They're all done. Like, they're in there. They're ready to go. They're done.
Just wait a minute. No, we looked at them. They're fine. They're installed. It's good. No problem.
Like February last year, they were in there. They were like in Orion, ready to go.
That's insane.
That's like the biggest turnaround in this story.
I just feel like there was a project manager at Lockheed that's like, nailed that one. Like, we look pretty good. We look pretty good today.
This has to make you ask questions though, right? Okay, so we've got this heat shield thing where they're like very clearly not communicating it and like doing a poor job of being transparent, and yet they have this super clear win, like, that nobody knew about. Like the avionics thing was in Orion a year ago.
They never want to live tweeted that avionics boxes though, because that was kind of embarrassing, right? Like,
but they could have bragged about how it wasn't actually a problem. It's like, look, yeah, you all said
they would have told me and you in particular. We told you so. That's what they could have done, Eric. There are email threads they could have replied to it. Probably all three of us that said like, yeah, we told you about this. This is what we meant. So yeah. Hilarious.
They should have been bragging about that. There should have been a huge on the Artemis blog. There should have been a great post, like how the electromagnetic testing was like all done as soon as all this other news came out. They were like pushing that out. They could have like deployed the avionics boxes as like counter PR
Some bait.
so fast, and they never did.
You did mention Bill Nelson in Congress.
Consulting group.
This made me think of a thing that we never brought up in the show, Jake, and it feels right to bring it up with Eric, who's been the one Bill Nelson defender that's come on this show time and time again and stood up with our berating of this. I'm pretty sure, not this hearing, the one before this, a couple weeks ago, that he committed perjury in Congress when they asked why the Chinese are landing on the far side of the moon, and he told them that it's always dark and that we don't know why they're landing on the far side of the moon. That was a legitimate conversation he had in Congress. So I do just want to say, like, this is the whole thing whenever it says, like, oh, you could find one felony a day. This was his. Just lying about the backside of the moon. So I'll dig that clip up because it's an epic one.
That was funny. I saw some, Chinese people on Twitter making fun of him about that. And
what part of Twitter are you on?
I was like, are you guys serious? Like, at least we're having like public discussions about our space program. Like, what's happening? It's like, this is democracy. And anyway, I mean, look, Nelson is what he is. I think he's done a fine job as administrator of NASA. And I hope Pam Mulroy follows him and does a great job as well. But he's older, and you're gonna slip up. I mean, I slip up when I speak publicly all the time. So
I'm pretty sure he knows that the backside of the moon is not dark all the time, and he's just going for it. And if he doesn't, that's a major concern that I have. So, yeah.
I mean, I learned that by listening to Pink Floyd about the far side.
I will say that he fended off some stupid questions in this most recent hearing really well when everyone just like circles through, sits down, asks a couple questions about how their astronaut's the astronaut that's key to the whole thing, and then they leave. And occasionally they'll do like a wide shot on those hearings and there's no one in the room. There's just like the one person talking to him. Like, this whole thing is embarrassing, but he knows the deal. He knows what he's there for. So
we can thank Newt Gingrich for that one, right?
I mean, he's in his element in Congress.
Yeah, he loves that.
So I think he does. And he does fine. I mean, generally he does a good job.
Yeah, he did low-key roll out some crazy news to me in that hearing, which is that the deorbit vehicle for the ISS is now a $1.5 billion program, which I will remind everyone is only $1.4 billion less than the entire Starship lunar lander contract that NASA is paying. So
it is. Yeah.
Why is it? Do some math real quick and tell me how you get to $1.5 billion.
I think it's obviously that they're prioritizing giving it to a legacy contractor. That's the only answer, right?
Do you think that actually happens like at NASA? They're like, okay, we got a contract to dole out. What's it worth? It's like, well, are we going to give this to an old company or a new company? And then they change the price based on it.
No, I don't.
I know we don't want to accuse them of there's your one felony.
Oh, now we're not going to conspiracy theorize about NASA Johnson.
I mean, I honestly haven't been following that issue too closely, Anthony. I missed that number, which is shocking.
It used to be below $1 billion, just shy of $1 billion, and now it's $1.5 billion. So let's do some quick pencil math, back of the napkin math here. You assume this will launch on a Falcon Heavy or Vulcan because it's going to be a giant thing with a lot of propellant to take the ISS wherever it needs to go. So that's like $100 to $300 million, depending on who competes and how competitive it is. The vehicle itself, I think there's two options. One is like, I don't even think Cygnus makes sense because you don't need like the rest of Cygnus. You just need like a bunch of fuel and the little Cygnus bus. So maybe a really chonkified commercial satellite bus, like a Maxar thing, would make more sense.
Just a Centaur with a Cygnus upside down on it, so that
the other way.
So that you can, I don't know, Centaur can get it there, and then Cygnus can. I don't know. I'm making stuff up.
Or like this. But I feel like I've seen something like that before.
Probably. There's got to be a PowerPoint with that somewhere.
It might, what it might be is the like the old school wet workshop nanoracks thing.
Oh, love it.
So maybe we bring that back out. All right. So there's that vehicle. I'm still like $800 million short on what this would cost, which we can only chalk up to $800 million to prove that you're not going to land this on a piece of land somewhere.
That's a lot of mission assurance.
Yeah. I think that's the whole thing, right? Just
Probably. Yeah.
You have to prove it to every country within 51 degrees inclination that we swear we won't land this on you. I don't know. That's a giant program. We can't figure out how to pay for any of this Artemis stuff, and also we have a $1.5 billion that needs to be spent.
Yeah,
So-
I need to go look at that. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's like, you know, on one hand, I'm like mad about that number, but also, you know, because Bill was like, we have to do this because we don't know what Vladimir Putin's going to do. And in that case, I'm just like, you're 100% correct. Like, I think it is very prudent to have an escape hatch for the ISS right now. I think it's like very smart to have that all lined up and ready to go, and like have a clear plan in place for, you know, when the doomsday comes for that program.
But I hate, Jake, I hate that this is the only thing that they're using that political line for. This has been my bugaboo the whole time. You have the best opportunity to get all sorts of money for commercial space stations or even extensions of the ISS. Fund a thing that does all the jobs that the Russian half does right now. You have so much opportunity for that, but they're in a situation because of all the other programs that they literally can't take advantage of that political scenario. And that drives me nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think one positive about orbit or funding a deorbit mission is that you do get NASA closer to declaring an end date for the ISS, right? Now,
Totally. Yeah.
If you decide you want to fly it to 2040, like Boeing would love to do, then make that decision. But if you're really going to deorbit it in 2030, then make that 100% clear, because these commercial space station companies, as you mentioned, Anthony, are all struggling right now. And if there was, the most important thing NASA could do outside of, like, you know, awarding more funding would be to set a certain end date for ISS, because that would really help them go to investors and say, hey, look, there really is going to be a need in 6 years for this. Look, NASA just said this. I think there's just enough ambiguity right now about the future of the ISS that it makes it difficult for those commercial companies.
Yep.
Does this all sink into, we'll go to the next Eric Berger story as on the rundown, which was the Boeing, was this like an all hands meeting that you were privy to, where they said they're going to be cutting the workforce back because of NASA budgets changing, which I feel like bearing the lead part there is NASA is talking about dropping the SLS funding in the out years of the budget requests. So.
Right. So, I mean, everyone kind of knew that once SLS started flying, like, you didn't need all of these billions and billions of dollars of development costs, right? I mean, it should come down, right? The cost should come down. I never really expected to see it in my lifetime, given that sort of the main reason the SLS was created was to spend this money on shuttle contractors. But NASA basically did tell Boeing that, look, we don't need an SLS every year for the next few years because we have these delays to Artemis II and Artemis III. And my understanding is that they said, you know, we can either skip a year of funding or we can spread it out over an extra year. And Boeing's response was, well, let's spread it out over another year. And so then they had to go to make these cuts to the SLS program, which are pretty substantial, I think. Not like 5%, you know, more like 10, 20% or more of the workforce.
Yeah. I'm really concerned about this in a way that, so we talked about how Orion, you know, was not the long pull item for a long time, and now all of a sudden it is. So now Orion's pushing the date out, and Boeing has to make workforce reductions. And like, is it going to swing back the other way now? So like, once Orion's finally ready, and then Artemis II flies, and all of a sudden NASA's gonna be like, we need another SLS core, and then Boeing's like, oh, now I got to hire people again, and like, you know, they're going to be slow to spin back up again, and there's like this weird pendulum effect of like one side of the equation slowing down the other over and over and over again. It's hard to get. It's like traffic, right? When there's like there's not a there's not like something actually causing a traffic jam, but someone slows down and then it like reverberates back through, and then it's just like constantly there's a traffic jam for no reason.
The rubber banding. Yeah.
My understanding is more of these cuts were in Huntsville, as
Okay.
opposed to Michoud in Louisiana where they build it, and Florida where they assemble it. So I think Boeing is set up to build one a year. So I don't think that's an issue. You know, when you get past Artemis III, you do get into the issue of exploration upper stage, which is what NASA currently says it wants to use.
Yeah.
And so you've got that vehicle testing, and you've got the Mobile Launch Tower 2, you know, ongoing. Although they're finally laying down some steel structures, it looks like, in Florida for that.
Like I would have thought that the Huntsville staff would be all about EUS right now, Boeing's group for that, right?
Yeah, although my understanding is that the cuts were some cuts happened in the U.S. program as well.
Yeah.
I always thought it was weird there were different line items in the budget. That like wasn't just more money for the SLS, and it's like also please give us an upper stage with this. Like this,
Yeah.
bought a stage that can only go
What
here.
would have happened if you had only funded one of those?
Well, where are you guys on the necessity of the EUS? This is the more powerful upper stage for the SLS rocket, that sort of the killer advantage. You can co-manifest payloads, which basically means that you can fly a crew on Orion out there with a component of the Lunar Gateway.
Well, and importantly, you can't fly the Gateway any other way because none of the pieces have any ability to do rendezvous and docking.
Right. Well, but they're
Orion
putting
is the thing that gets them
they're putting the initial pieces out there.
Well, because it doesn't need to dock with anything. It just goes out there.
Yeah.
Remember,
It
they're
just
one
gets
thing
to
now.
orbit.
They're not two
Yeah,
things.
it's
They're
an
just one
integrated
giant-
piece that just goes to a place, right? So the
the problem.
Falcon can put it there.
Yeah, they have done the thing that everyone complained about for years of like architecturing their way into the necessity of the stage
Yeah.
because of that constraint.
I mean, my concern with EUS is that you shouldn't invent a rocket for a one-time job, like, because like are you going to keep adding modules to the Gateway forever? No, like there's a number of them, 6, 7, whatever it is, and they're not going to launch all of them, so it's less than that, 4 or 5 of them or whatever it is, and then you're just done. Like you don't need it after that. Like that seems like an enormous waste of money. So like just like very high level.
I never really thought about that direction. Yeah,
like co-manifesting sounds awesome, but what are you going to do with it after Gateway's done, right?
right.
I mean, your point is very well taken, Jake, because it can throw 27 tons to lunar orbit, something like that.
Sure.
30.
Whatever.
I don't know what the number is.
You
I
can
mean,
pick it.
It's irrelevant.
NASA's counting on Starship working, and a cargo variant could carry 100 to 200 tons to lunar orbit, to the moon. So it's like, it really, in my mind, I think you hit the salient point, Jake, is that like EUS exists only to serve Gateway for these 5 missions or whatever. Yeah. And then after that, if like you really are delivering hundreds of tons of cargo on reusable landers launched by SpaceX and launched by Blue Origin, then what do you need the EUS for? And so like in a world in which NASA's budget is not constrained by, it's unlimited, it makes sense to have EUS and Gateway. But if like you're starting to cut programs, and I mean, it's just like, it seems like those two go together. And are they essential to the Artemis program?
No.
Not even one bit. Yeah. No, Gateway is the easy hack to solve NASA's budget problems. That is completely politically infeasible to do. That's the problem.
Well, and you know what? If we would be having an entirely different conversation if EUS cost $500 million to develop, right? Like if it was like a couple of years of development and it's ready to go, and it kind of should be because the engines are already done. It's just RL10s. Like they don't have to invent a new engine. This is
Those
like
are the same tank diameter as the other part.
It's a fuel tank and some avionics.
It's a short core stage plus more of the other engines.
So like
core stage had the same engines and it was $20 billion development.
Yeah, well, so we can have, that's a whole other podcast. But
how much is the EUS budget now?
Maybe $8 billion, something like that. I think round numbers is going to be like
That's
6
crazy,
to 10 billion.
Can we use it to deorbit the ISS?
That's the one right there. That's the life hack. Yeah. That cuts it to a nice 5.5, Jake.
Nice
So
5.5 Bs. That's it. We can stomach that.
Here's the thing, though. Here's for all the people that want to like go Kerbal on the real world is if you know your articles, Eric, about like can we fly this thing without the ICPS? I don't know. I tried to ask around. Nobody really knows. Seems to be an unanswerable question. But
I found out you can, but
you can. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So what if you did that, but you had like a real service module on Orion that could actually go places? And instead of spending a bunch of money on EUS, you spent a bunch of money on an actual service module that could fly all the way to low lunar orbit and back.
See, politically, I don't think that's possible because you're just cutting Europe out, and that's just not good.
Why couldn't we have asked Europe to make a bigger one to begin with?
They should have just done a better job.
Yeah. Like give them 2 OMS engines to hook on to that. They could have done that, you know?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I'll send them the EUS money, like straight up. If they want it, I'll send it to them.
I honestly don't know why we didn't ask Europe to build a more powerful. That's a great question.
Because it was only supposed to go to the ISS, right? 20 years ago, it made a lot of sense to have.
It was the ATV thing. It was a derivative of the ATV.
Yeah, I think that's
chunk.
it. I think that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. It was actually just supposed to do the ISS missions. Because in the old constellation diagrams, there was the little one, and then there was the big service module. And that was the one that went with like Altair and all that kind of stuff. I think there was a big one that was like in the mock-ups of the drawings of the lander. Let me look. You have the show for a second. I'm gonna Google.
we've solved it. Yeah, there we go. No, I've said this take before, but like, man, SLS Orion, this whole program could get itself out of so much trouble if it was flying once a year already. Like, or twice a year or 4 times a year. Like if it was that shuttle pace, imagine how much love this program would have right now if it was flying at shuttle pace. Like that would be. Whew.
Everyone was super happy when Artemis 1 flew, right?
Yeah,
it was like, wow, this is a vision of the future. And then nothing. 2 years later, we're still kind of like, well, when's the next one going to fly? When's the next one going to fly? And it's just like if you're really invested, and NASA is all in on SpaceX and Blue Origin lunar landers, right? And these are going to evolve into becoming reusable systems to put a lot of stuff on the moon, and NASA is investing in Eclipse and all this stuff. What purpose does a space station around the moon serve? A human-tended space station serve? Everyone wants to. The partners that are participating in the Gateway want to be on the surface of the moon. Like, it's difficult to see the value of it, and especially in a budget-constrained environment where you're building this upper stage and super expensive mobile launch tower, and putting I don't know what the budget line for Gateway operations is going to be, probably $1 billion or $2 billion a year. It just seems like there are other uses NASA could have for that money, like flying a Mars sample return mission or something like that.
It's got to be at least $2 billion a year just for the SLS launch, right?
Yeah,
fair point.
That would be booked.
You're right though that the Gateway itself was like a holdover from the time when that was the only politically survivable plan, but we've proven that the surface Artemis plans are politically survivable, and now JAX is like, when we're going to build this crazy rover and get on the surface as soon as possible, and I'm sure Canada's trying to figure out how arms work on the surface. Maybe we can get into the leg market. Who knows? Like, they'll figure something out, and everyone wants to get down, and so yeah, you've proven that you could make that
leg
jump.
Market, did you?
The leg market, yes, I did. Yeah, it's a big market, Jake. It's easy. It's 1/6 gravity, no problem. But yeah, like Gateway existed only because it was an extension of the ISS agreement, and it was politically survivable, and it was like achievable budget-wise. But we've proven.
And you're missing the most important point. It was the only place the SLS could get to.
That too,
SLS
yeah.
Line.
And now we have all these other things.
It was an actual destination where you didn't need a lunar lander. Well, now we have lunar landers.
Right.
2. So
how late can Gateway be for it to get lapped by Progress?
I mean, it's. I like the people running the Gateway program. That's the hard part for me, and I'm here in Houston.
Well, I don't think
it's
get
a Houston
fired. They
program.
can go do other stuff.
I know, but it's just
They're making habitats. You can put those on the surface. Like, there's nothing special about them about orbits. They'll do fine on the lunar surface.
We can just give you some legs to put on the Halo
leg
orbit.
market. It's a big
we
market.
Can put it on the surface.
We solved it. Canada's
Halo
contributed
with
a
four
huge
little
mech
legs
that the
with
Gateway
Canadian
can sit on.
flags them.
They're self-leveling. It doesn't matter what slope you landed on. It's great. It can walk between Artemis missions.
They work in ice and snow. It's great.
I mean, it's just that the optics of like a Starship, which is bigger than the Gateway, being docked to the Gateway or flying books. The Gateway's gonna be like, why do you have this if you've already got that there?
It looks completely ridiculous. Yeah.
I mean, that's the perennial problem for Starship. It makes everything else look weird.
But it's not just Starship. It's like the Blue Moon lunar lander too. Like you've got the lunar landers now, so you don't really need the. I mean, Gateway was the lunar destination when you didn't have landers. That's what it was.
Yep.
Well, we solved that one. Can we get a review of this rover? Talk about things that do go to the surface and go in Starship.
And we have to talk about Mars too, so we got to make time for that.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll save Mars. This is relevant though. Look at Eric driving this thing.
Yeah, zoom in on his face, because there's like, look at this smile.
Just
look
loving
at this
it.
Smile.
Loving that. I'll make it full screen for a second.
Yes, there you go.
That's so good.
So the Astrolab was doing a tour. They were in Houston. I think they're in DC now with their rover, and it's like super cool. Like you like put one hand on the sort of to hold on and not fall off, the hand with the joystick to kind of fly it, and then use like a touch screen to say, I want to go in this mode or that mode or whatever. And it's like it can go like diagonal like movement, because he's like Sergeant Jarrett Matthews, who's the founder who's helping me drive it, and he's like, let's say you want to drive 6 kilometers over to a crater over here, but the sun angle, we've got to power the rover, so like you could drive the rover like at an
Sideways.
angle with
Okay.
like just to maximize the solar panel radiance on the while you're going there, and people were kind of looking at it initially thinking it was goofy, because why are they standing up? You got these other hot rod looking rovers where people are sitting down and going down, but it turns out if you like go into like the Apollo notebooks and stuff for the astronauts, it turned out getting into that rover was like super difficult.
Yeah.
And they were bouncing all around. So
it's not a race car. Like, this is a work vehicle. I mean, think about anyone like who's like worked on a work site, and you rent one of those like Skyjacks, whatever. You're always standing up in those things. They're slow. They move around. They get the job done. Right. That's the point.
And
right?
it's also 1/6 G, so standing up is not like this huge burden.
It's not a big deal. Yeah.
You're just kind of sitting there floating anyway. And it's much easier to get into and out of. And actually, you can sit down. It drives like you could just drive it backward. You can sit on the back step with like a laptop and like just drive it. You can go on that way if you really want to sit down. So it's pretty cool. That's an interesting competition, because you've got 3 companies. And again, we're in a budget constrained environment, so probably NASA is only going to ultimately pick one company to do an unpressurized rover. And so these companies basically have 12 months to show their stuff to NASA, and then they're going to pick one, or maybe 2, but probably just one. So it's Astrolab and Lunar Outpost Intuitive Machines. Interesting thing about that is that the other 2 companies are backed by Lockheed and Northrop Grumman, so they have big backers. And Astrolab's kind of like the small company who's leading solely with Axiom.
The underdog.
Yeah.
I think this is the same one. Maybe it's not the same exact model. They brought like the mock-up to the Space Symposium last year, but they wouldn't let me stand up on it.
Yeah.
Probably couldn't have seen over the dashboard if I would have, but that'd be
you could see over it.
I had to drive backwards only.
No, they had a mock-up of Pete Conrad. They made sure that it worked on there for you.
I suspect it was the same one, because they've had it. But they're, I think they're the only one that has like a really kind of functional prototype. So I'm not sure they're the underdogs. They seem like they've got a lot of things going for them.
Love it. Cool. No, I'm excited for it. It looks cool. Both the unpressurized and the pressurized rovers, like the fact that those that are like RFPs that are out there and like we're moving on them is like so exciting to me, because like it feels, we've talked about rockets and landers for a long time, and they've mostly been in like the theoretical space, and then now they're kind of moving, and the fact that we're getting rovers into theoretical space is like, to me, is a very optimistic thing. Like there's some really good vibes to pull out of that, and like the Japanese pressurized one, the requirements on that, we were talking about this a couple of shows ago, Anthony. It's like, yeah, you can like live in that thing for 30 days. Like that is like a full-fledged spaceship. Like that is like wild that's something that they're working on actively, and that's a thing that's planned. That's great. I'm excited for that. I'm all into that.
I mean, as much as we've been critical of Artemis today, I want to be clear that I think the Artemis conception is awesome. It's like the best sort of deep space policy that's been around in my lifetime. It is sustainable in the sense that it has broad support from Congress, the White House, international partners, and the space flight community and industry. Like everyone is on board.
Yeah.
So I'm like super happy that it's going forward. And it's so like, yeah, you make a great point. Like we're going to have rovers on the moon, pressurized and unpressurized, and doing all this interesting stuff. And like the cool thing about the astrolab vehicle is it was initially designed to unload cargo from Starship, like a cargo container ship. Like, they're going to bring like all these pallets of cargo, and it just takes them and sets them up across various places of the moon. I mean, it's like, it's an exciting future if we get there.
Yeah, it is. Nailed it.
Do you want to speed run these Mars things, Jake?
The only reason I want to bring this up is because I feel like there has not been enough like shouting from the rooftops that this is a study that is happening, because NASA just awarded like all these study contracts. Like admittedly, they are study contracts. Like, so we know how a lot of those don't go anywhere, but like these are contracts to develop stuff to go to Mars commercially. And look at the cool stuff that's on this list. Like, so we have, so there's a whole bunch of different like categories of like contracts that NASA would theoretically want to dole out. So small payload delivery hosting services, large payload delivery hosting services. That's just like send a payload to the orbit of Mars and host it there or whatever, right? You have Mars surface imaging, so cameras pointing down, and then you have relay services, which is, your comms network. And like there's some great winners on here, like SpaceX for the comms net. That's Starlink at Mars. That's a study contract that NASA is now funding. Starlink at Mars, essentially, right? You've got ULA on there as a hosted payload at Mars, and it says modify an Earth vicinity cryogenic upper stage. That's Centaur at Mars. Okay, that's like, maybe that's ACES. I don't know. That's pretty cool.
ACES is back, Eric.
We've got Impulse on there. We've got Blue Origin on there. We've got Redwire on there. Like Astrobotics on. There's like some really cool stuff happening here.
Linger on the Astrobotic one for a second, because they won this whole round, okay? Because their first project is Astrobotic technology, modify a lunar exploration spacecraft. Their second win is modify a lunar exploration spacecraft to include imaging. they got
They're double billing. They're double billing on this one. They can write the same report with one extra chapter and get paid
also
twice.
A camera.
It's great. It's awesome. It's like, good for them. Like, well done, Astrobotic.
Nailed it.
You nailed it. I'm a freelancer. I've done that job. I've done that trick. It's great. It's awesome when it works.
That's hilarious. So can I ask you guys a question? Why do you think in the large payload delivery services, there's not a SpaceX bid for Starship?
It's very interesting. I don't know. Maybe
I
it's not
haven't
worth
developed
their time.
theories for this. Yeah.
I don't know.
The paperwork would be more than $200,000, and they've already done it. What's your theory? Do you have a theory?
Do they want to go into orbit? Maybe that's the issue, right? Besides like, but I don't. Why couldn't you just send the
SpaceX would be happy to accommodate any mission for NASA at Mars, I think. I don't know. I don't know. I thought what was most interesting to me is that of the 12, I think there are 12 chosen, none of them ostensibly require a Starship vehicle, which is the one vehicle under development specifically to go to Mars. And I wonder if politically NASA did that because it doesn't want the Mars CLPS program to be associated or to be known as the Starship program.
You don't want to be like the Elon handout department, right?
That's right. You don't want to be like, the Bezos bailout fund that Bernie Sanders said about the lunar landing. So I think that's
my only theory. I only have one other legit theory: is that the Starship to Mars team is going to be busy between now and the end of the year.
They are, but I mean, all these
they
other
have
companies,
to save Mars sample return. That's it. That is their goal, Eric.
I cannot. It's difficult for me to see a world in which the planetary science community gives that mission to Starship.
I see a world that is difficult for them to figure out how the hell to do that mission without giving that thing to Starship. That's my problem.
Politically, that's a big matzo ball, my friend. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I do commend NASA sort of to essentially taking that away from JPL and saying, let's figure out a better way to do this. And if we can't do it in a better way, maybe we just ought to not do it right now. I think that was the right decision.
You know my take, Jake. SpaceX better fucking do it anyway.
Yeah, they better put a rock solid proposal on the table in 15 days when it's due.
On the clock.
That's terrible.
It is funny how short those studies are to like figure out how to save sample return. You've got to.
You know what's wild about that too
that.
is the other wild. Let's do 1 minute on MSR. Is that they have to spend $300 million this year. Okay. Those are going to be some pretty intense reports. Because these other ones that they just handed out for these ones we just talked about, they were like $200,000 a piece. Okay. Yeah. $300,000 a piece at most times 12 means like $4 million. Okay? Yeah. And they got to spend 100 times that for the MSR review, and they're due in 90 days. So like these companies, like, I don't know if they hand out 10 of these companies have to like, I don't know, spin up like 1,000 workers to work on them to fill that money out. Like, what do you do?
But doesn't that also include like paying for the NASA MSR staff too?
That's what it's going to be. It's going to be $290 million to support the existing MSR staff and $10 million for the reports. Oh, what a sad state.
Are these Mars things only to orbit? They're not going to the surface at all?
Yeah,
they're not studies?
No surface stuff yet. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's like payload delivery to orbit and then payload hosting in orbit. So those, two kind of scenarios. And there's a specific one for imaging and a specific one for comms, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Let's do it.
Let's go. We got. I guess we're
all excited for it, man.
Eric, what's the right now, May 2nd, 2024, what is the manifest of Artemis 2 through 5?
2 is Artemis II as conceived. 3 is Starship docking with Orion and Leo. 4 is a lunar landing. And 5 is, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see we'll see. I don't know.
Artemis 4 is a landing with Starship?
It's right now. It's on the book. 4.
Oh, it is anyway, Starship. Right? 5 is the blue moon.
5 is the blue moon, supposedly.
Jake, you don't want humans to fly on Artemis 2, right?
I don't think they will.
You don't think they will at all?
The moon on Artemis 2?
If they do, they're not leaving Earth orbit. That's my prediction. Is that if NASA may like reconfigure it in a way that they still fly people on it, but I don't think they're going to go all the way. I think your docking scenario gets moved ahead of time, and maybe they put people on it to like flesh that out. You get your Apollo 9, and then the third mission becomes the whatever Artemis 2 is today. That's my prediction.
When's the docking happen?
I can see that.
What?
He's saying that Artemis 2 is the Starship in Leo. You just don't fly Orion to the moon. You do the docking in Leo.
Keep everything the same as it is, but insert a new mission first coming up next to be your Leo docking one.
Wow. That's like that. I like that. That sounds wild, and I'll co-sign it.
I think all the safety stuff that came up today or this week or whatever, the safety stuff that came up today is going to it's going to be enough of a confidence hit that going all the way and completing the Artemis 2 mission all the way in lunar orbit is not going to be tenable. and so they're gonna want to like test this heat shield out again, but they're gonna want to also not skip the people part, because that's like a big reputation hit. And so you combine them. Let's send people, but put them in Leo. We'll knock out the docking, get that confidence stuff out of there. And hey, look at that. We're going to get some more heat shield information to make sure that our new design works, and we'll feel better about it. That's my thought.
I think they'll convince themselves to fly with the heat shield as is. That would be my strong guess.
They're going to create flight rationale? Is that what they're going to do?
They'll
God, I hate that. I hate that term so much.
They'll do studies. They'll understand the risk. They'll say the current design mitigates that risk, and they'll fly. That's my prediction.
All right. Showdown.
Yeah, I'm conflicted, so I'm going to just be the judge of this one.
Oh, that's not fair. You shouldn't get to
no.
All
right, fine. I can't see them waiting long enough to do the docking thing as Artemis II, so I do agree, and I think there's too much of a ego hit to not fly crew on Artemis II. And it's a long way away. So, and I think if they're willing to fly crew on the first test flight of the life support system, then they're probably fine doing that with the heat shield that has already been tested, and it did make it back through. So even if it was that bad again, like, I don't know, I'm more nervous about the life support system. Beyond that, I don't know, man. Like the Starship docking, like is docking the part we're concerned about? That's what we're concerned about.
Everything goes as planned except Artemis II flies in 2029.
I think
I kind of feel like that's where I'm leaning. Yeah.
The main concern is you don't have a 4 or 5 year gap between Artemis II and Artemis III.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then don't tell me the concern's docking, everybody. I'm not. If we're concerned about docking when we're flying to the goddamn moon, we're doing it all wrong. We've figured out docking. I'm not concerned about it. So yeah, I don't know. I guess.
It's not your ass. It's not your ass in Orion. So who cares?
I mean,
I got a countryman in Orion for Artemis II.
fair.
I'm concerned about it.
Yeah. I got an Eagles fan. Go Birds. So.
Go Birds. Yeah.
All right, Eric. Where should everybody follow you if they're somehow listening to this and they have not?
Best place is to come to Ars Technica, and you can find my author page there, Eric Berger, Ars Technica. Got an article coming Monday, sort of trying to explain why Starliner took 14 years, it's pretty measured. But
it's not your ass in Starliner.
It's not my ass in Starliner. It's just sort of trying to explain why it took so long, and based on some interviews with some people on background, and sort of explain that how they ended up 4 years behind SpaceX just by getting more money and sort of being the blue blood of spaceflight. So
yeah,
that'd be something worth checking out, I think.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jake, next week I convinced Caleb Henry to come with us and dive into their Starlink financial model that they just did at Quilty Analytics.
Nice.
I'm excited.
I had lunch with him last week, and he gave me a little preview of like how they put this together, and it's kind of a wild process. So,
yeah.
Are they profitable or are they not profitable? What do they think?
He says yes. So, yeah.
We're gonna find out if my 1,100 pesos is what makes the deal every month.
So tune in next week for that. But see you, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
See ya.